Scrappy's wife, Bambi, was enjoying a quiet time with her secret lover when he unexpectedly and shockingly entered his home, his sanctuary. His whole world fell apart. The lady he trusted and the life he thought he knew were torn apart quickly, but this was no typical drama. You thought that every scandal, betrayal, and amazing event had been chronicled in love and hip-hop. With Scrappy's unrestrained outburst, it was clear that this was not going to end amicably. He refused to forgive and go on. He refused to ignore it. Through this betrayal, which required something bigger and more dramatic, the formerly impermeable rapper would be left gazing at a sight straight out of a nightmare in Bambi's secret. Lil Scrappy had no clue what sort of betrayal he was in for when he made the decision to leave the studio early that night. Even though it was becoming dark as he wrapped up in the studio, where he often spent late refining rhythms, putting down tunes, and dancing with his coworkers, something prompted him to go early. A gut instinct or fatigue from weeks of late-night training might have been the cause. Unable to locate it, he grabbed his keys, drove out of the studio, and headed home. As he drove into the driveway, the lights were on and the front windows were gently shining, and everything seemed to be in its proper place. He thought of how nice it would be to hang out with Bambi in the evening, maybe over a quiet dinner and a performance, but that peaceful feeling vanished almost immediately as soon as he entered the front door. Although at first he couldn't identify the cause, the air appeared to the TV was off, the house was too silent, and it seemed weighty and almost charged. No music was playing. When he called out to Bambi, his voice reverberated somewhat in the quiet room, but she did not respond. He looked to the kitchen, but the living room was empty, and she was nowhere to be seen. Then, from the direction of their bedroom, he'd heard a faint sound of laughing. He grimaced and put down his keys, assuming she had gone for a quick dash to the store. The muffled laughter got softer as he moved down the hallway, his stride slowing. With the muffled sounds just beyond, he approached the door gently, his hand on the doorknob, pausing for a few seconds before he pulled it open. It was a sight straight out of a nightmare, and it felt unbelievable. There was no giggle, just two voices, one obviously Bambi, the other a man Scrappy, who stopped in position, his pulse thumping in his chest. Sitting next to another guy on the bed, they were too near. Scrappy's breath caught in his throat, and the room seemed to freeze as the laughing stopped and the two on the bed turned to see him standing there. He had pallid face and large, regretful, and terrified eyes. Scrappy was not paying attention, and his eyes were searing into hers with a mixture of surprise and anger. Bambi began to tremble, her face changing from astonishment to terror. "Please tell me." "That's not the situation here. You and my wife are not in my home, in my room." The guy stammered, and Scrappy gave a loud, almost sour chuckle. "This isn't what it looks like." The guy did exactly as Scrappy had expected. He ran away rather than respond. The guy walked quickly by Scrappy, disappeared down the corridor, and left via the front door without saying another word. It slammed shut during a silence that felt much deeper. Scrappy and Bambi were alone in the room, and the tension was so intense that it was hard to breathe. Bambi raised her hands slightly in an effort to calm him. He shot back, "Scrappy, listen to what he said. Listen to how disrespectfully you treated me in my residence. Pay attention to how you want to help me understand this." Then she tried again. "You've been fighting in the studio all the time. I was lonely. I'm at fault, I see." He's speaking in Rose's voice now, and his anger is exploding. "I work for us and for our future." Her silence was more incriminating than any explanation she could have provided, and she didn't respond. Scrappy took a step back and wiped his face as Bambi looked down and said, "I never meant for it to go this far. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me." He repeated, his voice laden with incredulity. "Do you even hear yourself right now? You brought another man into our home, into our bedroom. I'm done. This isn't possible." He said, "Pack your things and go." Bambi's head jolted up as he yelled, "Please go, Scrappy," his voice resonating throughout the room. She felt as if the weight of his words suddenly fell upon her, and she turned to begin gathering her things. Scrappy observed her for a long time, his anger still simmering under the surface, as she walked slowly and nervously, saying, "I mean it. Bambi, I can't look at you right now. I can't even be in the same room with you." He stood there and said nothing more till Bambi was about to go. The sound of the door shutting behind her abruptly disrupted all Scrappy knew about this home, life, and relationships as he perched on the side of the bed and stared at the floor. Nothing would ever be the same again, he realized as Bambi's silhouette vanished into the darkness, even though he had no idea what would happen next. It was supposed to be his sanctuary, the one place where he felt safe, loved, and respected. But instead, it served as a reminder of betrayal, a crude, twisted joke from the person he trusted most. Sitting on the side of the bed that had once represented their life together, his chest felt tight and his mind was racing. He stared at the floor and reenacted the scene in his mind. The laughing, their amazed looks, the explanations, and it was like watching a lousy movie. He tried to put everything together, but he was unable to do so. How long had it lasted? A new rush of anger surged, and Scrappy, wondering how she could have done this, beat his fist into the mattress. He'd been loyal and true, and he'd always put their relationship first, at least in his opinion. It was for them, for the family they spoke about establishing, for the life he thought they both wanted, even if he worked very hard. Had the fissures that were forming in front of him gone unnoticed, or had he been too focused on his work and their future to recognize the warning signs? After an hour of the night, he couldn't sleep, and he was thinking about his nightstand when his employer, Studio, texted him. Scrappy couldn't bring himself to care, not now. The only update that mattered was the one that broke his world. As he paced the home, his mind was churning with the worst-case scenarios. What if this wasn't the first time? What would happen if Bambi had more secrets to hide? However, what if this was just too real? At last, Scrappy walked outdoors, shocked awake by the crisp morning air. He needed to get away from the memories that were shackling him. He had spent the whole night fighting an invisible enemy, his thoughts. Though he knew he needed to clear his head, the framed photos on the wall, the little decorations they had chosen together, and the faint scent of her perfume were all reminders of what he had lost. As he passed the homes, he saw how many of them had seen Bambi's boyfriend sneak in and depart, but he still believed the neighborhood might be helpful. Did your neighbors know? Was he the target of backstabbing laughter? There was an unbearable degree of paranoia. Scrappy accelerated his speed to beat the constant murmuring in his head. He took out his phone and phoned a number he hadn't used in a long time, since he knew he wanted to speak to someone who would understand and couldn't keep this to himself. The phone rang, and Scrappy said, "I need to talk. It's bad." His friend is always direct and didn't mince words. He said, "I caught her with someone else in my house." Hearing the deafening silence, he said, "Damn, bro, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to do." Scrappy acknowledged that he asked her to leave because he couldn't even look at her at the moment. He exhaled. Although his companion couldn't see it, he nodded. "Look, you need to take care of yourself first, clear your head, don't make any big decisions while you're still mad, and let it all sink in." "Yeah, I hear you," he said, adding that the conversation had somewhat helped him feel less alone. But as soon as he hung up, a new thought came to him. What if this was made public? He was a well-known rapper with a following, and it might be devastating if people found out or if bloggers found out. He saw a heartbreaking message on social media while looking through his feed. There were rumors of difficulties in paradise for Bambi and Lil Scrappy. But it wasn't just one post. The tale swiftly gained traction on blogs, fan accounts, and even comments from folks he hadn't talked to in years. Scrappy's rage returned as he smashed his phone down. He hadn't even had time to think things through, and now everyone was making assumptions about what had transpired and interfering with his private life. By nightfall, he found himself in a precarious situation, feeling bewildered, upset, and furious, with no idea of what to do next. He had not expected things to happen so rapidly, but he was certain that the public reaction would be negative. Individuals were picking sides. Some supported Bambi, while others supported him. One commenter commented that Bambi was incorrect, but maybe Scrappy wasn't paying enough attention to her, while another remarked that it was unending. Scrappy should have foreseen that the comment area would be a battleground. A few individuals he hadn't talked to in years wanted to hear Lil Scrappy's tale firsthand, but Scrappy wasn't prepared to do so just yet. He needed to ascertain the truth and its implications for him, Bambi, and their future. Even though the initial shock of betrayal was still bothering him, he wasn't going to allow it to get to him. Scrappy immersed himself in the studio and poured himself into his work as never before, hoping that this time would be no different. The music became his escape, a means of turning his bewilderment, pain, and rage into something concrete. He wasn't just creating music, he was sharing his narrative, exposing the suffering and the lessons he had learned. For a brief while, it seemed like therapy, but the outside world was still weighing heavily on every rhythm he made and every song he wrote. The people couldn't stop talking about the drama. So much as he wanted to keep his head down and concentrate on the music, he realized he couldn't keep it that way long. The fallout was still rife on blogs, social media, and YouTube gossip channels. And each time he thought the frenzy had died down, a new headline would appear, stoking the flames. Lil Scrappy's retaliation. New songs announced during the Bambi scandal or Bambi's exclusive interview wasn't a regular person going through a breakup. He was well known, and if he didn't say something, someone else would, and their account wouldn't be nearly as true. He had meticulously prepared the interview, the questions, and the message he wished to deliver with the assistance of his team. When the cameras began to roll, he took a deep breath and started speaking candidly. "It's been a tough time, no doubt about it," Scrappy said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I've had problems with Bambi, just like any other marriage, but what occurred lately cannot be undone." Reflection was a part of the interview, in addition to the betrayal. In order to explain the rifts in their relationship, Scrappy spoke about his faults and the demands of being in the limelight. "Had hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible, but I'm not here to criticize others or share personal information. I'm here to set the record straight. I'm not blaming myself for her decisions, but I am aware that I had a part in the growing gap between us." Well done, Scrappy, for taking responsibility for his role. Viewers were moved by his candor, and instead of guessing, they applauded him for owning up to his vulnerability and confronting the issue head-on. A person said, "It takes a real man to admit he's not perfect." But not everyone was revealing enough that Bambi's camp released a statement implying that Scrappy was only disclosing half the truth. According to her spokeswoman, the constant back and forth with the media was exhausting, but Scrappy decided to focus on what he could control rather than allowing it to control his life. He began going to the gym again, spent more time with his family, made new acquaintances, and even sought advice from a mentor who had experienced similar public upheaval. He started to rebuild gradually. When his manager unexpectedly came up to him one day while he was in the studio reviewing a new song, he said, "Scrap, a documentary crew wants to follow you for a few months because they think your story and everything you've been through could really inspire people." Scrappy wasn't sure if a documentary sounded intrusive, like exposing himself to more scrutiny, but he accepted, seeing it as a chance to learn more about his journey, his perseverance, and his comeback. During his time in the studio, attending team meetings and spending time with his children, the cameras tracked his highs and lows, his moments of doubt and determination, and his quiet times of reflection while sitting by the lake and penning psalms in a notebook. When it was broadcast, the documentary was a huge success, praised by both fans and reviewers for its unadulterated honesty and emotional depth. The article was not just about a cheating scandal, it was also about resilience, atonement, and the ability to reflect on oneself provided Scrappy with the feeling of relief he had been missing for months. Lil Scrappy was more than just a betrayed rapper in the end. He was a man who learned from his mistakes and emerged stronger, an artist who transformed suffering into purpose, and he knew that he had become a better version of himself that he could be proud of, despite the fact that the wounds of betrayal would never completely heal. What do you think will happen to Lil Scrappy next? Will he bounce back from the controversy and come out stronger than before, or will this scandal have a long-term effect on his career? Please share your thoughts in the comments area below. Is their tale over, or do you believe Bambi will make an effort to win him back? If you agree, kindly click the like button. To ensure that you don't miss another dramatic breakdown, believe me, this is just the beginning. Enjoy your tea and subscribe to our channel. There is always more drama, controversy, and truth waiting for you. Approaching, so pay close attention since you won't want to miss this next action.